go over my pre-market plan going into tomorrow. I'll do my best to make this quick and clean, but there are a couple of things that I do want to go over, so I'll do my best to try and speed this video up at the end. Now, starting off, right? History likes to repeat itself. This reminds me of peak tariff talks back in April. This reminds me exactly of that, right? Now, let's zoom in here, right? I remember this day like yesterday. This was April 9th. Look at this daily candle recover after tariff talks, right? This is a single daily candle, right, on April 9th. Look at this candle compared to all these regular daily candles, right? Now, this move, like I said, history likes to repeat itself. All this is a news-driven play, right? This was not a technical analysis breakdown, right? This was a news-driven play. And my advice that I want to give to young traders, and I wish I was given this when I first started, when big events like this happen, the best thing you can do is ignore all the outside noise, right? Every trader you follow, big trader you follow, doesn't matter who, right? Everyone's trying to, sound like a guru or, predict the next move, right? Our job as traders is to react, not predict, right? And, when you feed into all the different news and all the different opinions, whether you know it or not, it does affect your decision making skills throughout the week, right? Because you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm looking to go long here, but this person who's a successful trader, they said that they're not. Should I take this trade or not? You know what I mean? So that's something I really want to emphasize on. In this space, a lot of people use these big events or these big news catalyst plays to, sound like they're a know-it-all, right? All this is a news-driven play. It has nothing to do with technical analysis. And let's zoom out here, right? Does this look like a bearish market? All right, let's even look on the weekly, right? Does this look like a bearish market? Not at all, right? This happened around April, right? We were trending to the downside, news catalyst, tariffs, and then as soon as that passed, right, what happened? That led to a crazy bull run, right? So I just really wanted to emphasize on that, right? A lot of people are panicking. They are trying to anticipate. We're going to do what we always do, go into the market and take trades off our key levels, let our trades come to us, right? I'm young. I do this full time. Prior to this, I was a first responder here in Los Angeles. I was working in fire and I was a medic, right? And the one thing that we were taught was panic kills, right? Stay calm, right? There's nothing to stress about. There's nothing to worry about. We're going to do what we always do, right? And remember, if you're always unsure, cash is still a position. Remember that. Now, let's get into it. I just really wanted to hit on that, right? Okay. Now, there's a couple of things. Couple of things. Actually, let me zoom out here on the 1 hour, right? Let me zoom out here. Coming into tomorrow, right? We are still taking trades off our key levels. Now, remember, straight down equals straight up. If we see a crazy recovery, I will not be surprised. Why? Because there is so much thin volume that has to be filled, right? There's so much thin volume that has to be filled. So many gaps that have to be filled. So if we see straight up, do not be surprised. I know I won't, right? So coming into tomorrow, right? I just have this marked out, color coded differently, just so I can know that it's also my previous day low, right? I don't trade SPY and Qs, but if we get a break and retest over the 652.20, right, you can look for upside, right? Because that's showing us that, okay, buyers bought back above the previous day low, which means on the intraday, we can clearly see that buyers are in control, right? So you can look for some upside if we can reclaim the 652, right? If we fall under this after hours low, this 646.50, right, you can look for more downside continuation, right? It's that simple. So coming into the plan on Monday, right, it's really just being patient, right? Seeing what the market wants to do, right? We can rip to the upside, we can gap up, we can gap down, right? There's a couple of things that can't happen because remember, this was a news driven play, right? Straight down equals straight up. So for the next couple of days, if we just see crazy upside continuation, I will not be surprised, right? So that's the game plan for the SPY, right? Let's see if buyers can reclaim this previous day low, right? If they do, we can just look, right, for some more upside continuation and look for the thin volume to be filled. That is a very valid play, right? You can look for really a short under this 649 targeting this weekly, but this, right, this weekly level, this is our key level we want to watch because if we break under this weekly, right, and this after hours low where buyers step in, that is a very big downside play, right? And we can really start looking at favor shorts there. Qs. Same thing, right? Look how aggressive, buyers stepped up during the after hours, right? That's what we want to see. Like I said, this was a news-driven play, right? This was not a technical analysis breakdown. So if we see buyers step up aggressively, starting to push this thing higher, I will not be surprised. Why? There's a lot of thin volume that has to be filled here, right? So if we can reclaim over this, what is it, this 592.86, right? I like that. Why? Because it shows that we're above the previous day low, and on the intraday, we are bullish, right? If price can open up and stay above 587.85, that shows that, okay, buyers are in control on the intraday, right? We're still sitting above this previous day low. That's what we want to see, right? So coming into tomorrow is really the same thing as 5, right? If we fall under this 583, this after hours low, we can look for more downside. But if buyers want to defend this previous day low and this daily 587, we can just look for more upside. It's very that simple, right? Now Tesla. In a way, I'm very happy this kind of happened on Tesla. Stick with me, right? The reason for that being is because Tesla really wasn't doing anything, right? You can look here, we were moving higher, but then we just started to consolidate. And then after we broke under this over this 436.30, we just formed another channel and we started to consolidate. Now, zoom in here, right? Last week there was really nothing on Tesla. This is why we avoid channels, right? Because we don't want to be in that. The only 2 days there was something going on was Monday and Tuesday. That's it. And why? It's because after we broke outside of this channel 445, right, we had clean upside continuation, right? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we really just sat in between this channel. We didn't do anything, right? So I'm kind of happy, we got a little bit of a pullback here on Tesla. Now, coming in on Monday, right? This is big for me. I'm really looking for both sides on this because this is a big RR trade on Tesla, right? Let's break this down. This is going to be our no trade zone. right? We want to let our trades come to us. This is going to be our no trade zone. I am looking for a break and retest over this 410. If we do that, that is a lot of upside continuation, right? That is a big RR trade. And if we short under this 402.40, if we fall under that, right, that is a big RR trade to the downside. Now let's zoom out here. Let me go to the daily, right? Like I said, and if you haven't checked out my educational video, I highly recommend you do that because I break this down very thoroughly. We are trading off the higher time frame. We are just using the smaller time frame for precision entries, right? So you can clearly see, right? This 410 is a key level, right? Buyer step in here, step in here, step in here, and body of the candle closes here, right? This is being defended very well by buyers. This is why we never wanted to short into this level, right? After you see buyers took over this level, 410, we pushed all the way up to what, 470? Right? Yeah, 470. That is big. This is a big hold here, right? And even when we had this downside on Friday, even buyers still defended this 410. This is a very big key level here. Now, right? If we reclaim this 410, there's nothing in its way, right? This is a big RR trade to the upside, targeting this 423.15. And if we fall under this 402, right, that is now, right, a leg lower to the downside. And we are now bearish bias on this thing, right? There's nothing in its way to the downside if we fall under 402, which you can clearly see. So tomorrow, right, we're going to sit on our hands, right? Take the best, leave the rest. So clearly in between these two key levels, right? This is our no trade zone. We're looking for a break and retest over 410, right? Amazing RR trade if we get that, or a break and retest into 402.40, right? And that is an amazing RR trade if we get that, right? These are two high probability setups to the upside or to the downside, right? Now, the reason I like this short, right? Like I've already said, this will be a lower low forming, right? I am willing to take this risk, right? I'm willing to risk 2,000, 3,000 to make, 6, 8, or 10 to the downside if this kicks in, right? And if buyers step in on this 410, all you got to do is zoom out. You would see that we are still in the uptack, right? In continuation to the upside, right? Buyers are still controlling and defending this 410, which we need this level to hold to see more continuation to the upside. If we fall under 402.40, right, we can definitely see some more downside continuation. AMD. Now, AMD, I'm going to get into this in a little bit more depth here for a couple of reasons, right? AMD held up fairly well, right? Out of all the tech names, I believe AMD held up fairly well, right? Let's just go through this, right? Look at NVIDIA, right? Even during the after hours, it sold off, right? Apple sold off tremendously. Even Tesla, right? Sold off tremendously. Something that stands out to me on AMD, right, is even though it sold off, look how aggressive buyers stepped in down here, right? Towards this weekly support, towards this 4-hour support, right? And all we got to do is zoom out here to get a more clear picture, right? Stepped in here very aggressively. Something that also stands out to me, right? Let's zoom in on the intraday. During the midst of that sell-off, we tried to have a recovery. That's something that stands out to me, right? I mean, that's crazy. We went from pretty much the bottom being 213 and we pushed all the way back up to 221, right? The fact that we almost had pretty much a V-shaped recovery in the midst of that sell-off, that is crazy to me. Now, something that also stands out to me, and this is why it's very important to trade only a handful of stocks and understand how they move, understand their personalities, because something on AMD that stands out to me is its IV. I can't tell you how many traders go into the trading week and they never look at the IV going into that week, right? Now, understanding the personality, right? This is fairly high. That we're almost sitting at 90% on AMD, that stands out to me, right? Let's look at Tesla, right? This is about normal, right? This is about as normal as IV. Let's look at Apple. It's probably low 40s, right? As we know, Apple moves fairly slow on underlying, so that's pretty normal to me. Even NVIDIA, right? Sitting around 68%, right? Kind of normal to me. But AMD almost sitting around 90% implied volatility. That's something that stands out to me, right? So if we go here, right, that doesn't surprise me. Like this thing is holding up fairly well. So two things I'm looking for on AMD, right? A break and retest over 22730, targeting all-time highs, or a pullback long or fell under this weekly key level, right? This 203 is a really big key level here, right? Let's zoom out. The reason I like this is if we fell under this is about a $30 gap, right? Don't forget, AMD gapped up tremendously, right? If we fell this 203, that is a big downside gap fill play, right? I am very intrigued in that. Or, right, we could see this, right? If buyers are still in control, we pull back, we hold this weekly level, we could see this for more upside continuation targeting all-time highs. So even with this big sell-off, you can clearly see, right, we are still, bullish on the higher time frame. That is something we want to see. So this 203 is really the key level. If price wants to stay heavy and chop around down here, this is the key level to read off of. So I like my trades to come to me. So zoom in here on the 15. This, right, this is a no trade zone for me. I don't care about anything in here, right? Nothing in here for me, right? But a break and retest over 227, targeting all-time highs, that is a very valid play, right? A pullback long off this weekly 203 or a break and retest under this, that is an RR trade that is very big to either side, right? So you just have to read the price action down here, right? Let's zoom in here on the 1 hour, right? Really nothing going on in here after we gapped up. There's really nothing going on, right? We still have to let price develop, but these are the two key levels we want to trade off of in the video, right? Beautiful. I mean, this sell-off is a little unfortunate. We see buyers stepping in very aggressively during the after hours. What I want to see is a break and retest, right, over this weekly level or a short under this 179.45, right? This entire upside continuation was textbook, right? It was textbook. Let me break down why, right? Bullish on the higher time frame on the daily, we consolidate, next leg higher. Look at this, continuation, stair step higher, consolidation, we break outside of that consolidation, stair step higher before we have our sell-off, right? Now, I know typically I avoid channels, right? As we know, we don't trade channels, but this is different, right? Like I said, this was not a technical analysis breakdown. This was a news-driven breakdown. This is a big reclaim. right? This is a very big reclaim. This is a weekly level. If we break back over this 184.50, right, we can definitely see this, right? We'll enter at the bottom of this range looking for continuation towards all-time highs, right? This is still intact to the upside, right? So if we can reclaim this 184.50, that would be very big. Remember last week, this was, I'm sorry, roughly 2 weeks ago, right? This was a big hold, right? This was a very big hold. Buyers were defending this very well, right? This weekly support level was defending this very well. That's what we want to see, right? So that being said, if we can reclaim this 184.50, right, we can definitely look for more side continuation. If we fall under this 179.45, look at this RR trade. There's nothing in its way to the downside, right? Nothing in its way to the downside. So, right, sit on your hands, let your trades come to you. We're taking trades off of key levels. Nothing has changed. So those are the two plays that I'm looking for on the video coming into Monday, right? Long over this 184.50 or short under this 179.45. Lastly, Apple, right? Now, same thing with Nvidia, right? This is a weekly level. If we can reclaim this 247.30, look at this RR trade, right? Nothing in its way to the upside. Remember, this is a lot of thin volume that has to be filled, right? So straight up equals straight down. I would not be surprised. So I would love to see Apple break over this 247.30 to the upside. Or if we fall into this 241.30, there's nothing in its way to the downside, right? Let's zoom out here on the daily. We've been saying for the longest, right? This was not a name that we wanted to short. We were very intact to the upside. We were not that far away from all-time highs, right? We were consolidating before we got the next leg, higher or lower, right? And as you can see, we were slowly but surely getting our way to all-time highs. Now, clear structure here, right? Beautiful chart, very clean, key levels. If we reclaim, this weekly level, that is a big reclaim. That is a very big deal, right? We want to see buyers step in and push this thing higher. So if we reclaim this 247.30, we can definitely see this, right? We can see this, no doubt at all. And if we break under here, right, the next key level of support on the daily is just 234.30, right? Anywhere in between here are no trade zone, right? We're going to let our trades come to us. Lastly, Palantir. I don't really trade this name. I've only taken barely a handful of trades off this name this year, but I do want to break this down, right? The reason you want to be cautious on Palantir is because, as you can see, every time we start to push into this all-time high, sellers step in very aggressively up here, right? So now, I mark this out as a zone because I don't want to go long off this 184.50, knowing that there are heavy buyers. I'm sorry, sellers sitting up here, right? Let's just zoom out to a naked chart, right? Look at this. Break this down. Look at the price action here. This is the clean price action we want to trade. We ended up gapping up, right? Making all-time highs. We filled the gap to the downside. What do we do? Consolidate it, next leg higher. And then what are we doing now? We're just consolidating before we get a next leg higher or lower, right? This is why, right? You use these zones to kind of help you out. That's clean structure, right? If we get a break and retest under this, right, and sellers show their hands, we are now in a downtrend, right, on the higher time frame. So just be cautious trading this name. But coming into Monday, right, for those who do trade it, right, we're going to avoid this channel like we've been doing for the longest, right? We're going to avoid this channel. Now, since we are intact on the higher time frame to the upside, you can look for a break and retest over this 177.05. You would be entering at the bottom of this range where you can see clearly, right? This is being respected and defended. So this is a good shot, taking this. Or I would wait for the short under this 169, right? That means we finally broke outside all this consolidation under this 169. Now look how clean price action would be, right? Nothing in this way to the downside, right? The only way I'm really looking to go long on this name is honestly after we break all-time highs. If we can break 188 and get that push into all-time highs, looking for continuation higher, I like that. Shorten this name, right? If we can get under 169, clearly nothing in its way, I like that to the downside. For me, on Monday, I'm pretty much hands off, right, on this name, but a really good shot, right, a high probability shot, in my opinion, is over this 177.05. You will be going back into this channel, right, which is what we avoid, but on the higher time frame, it makes sense. You are with the overall trend, and you're entering at the bottom of this channel. So that is a higher probability setup to the upside.